now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
What's going on, RBLR Nation? You are tuning into the Rays version of our podcast. Opening day, I am here with the one and only Mr. Ben Whitelaw. How are we doing today, man?
Hey, good morning. It's great to get a 2-1 win yesterday and looking to make it, a 162-0 season this year, I think.
Oh, hot take, Ben. Yep, it's happening. It's happening. You heard it here first, guys. Yeah, so you mentioned the 2-1 win. I may or may not have predicted that on my Twitter. For you guys that are going to check now, I did not predict that. But, I mean, what are your takes on the game, man? We'll just jump right into it.
Really, really great contributions from the bullpen and the bench. I thought Cash pulled all the right strings, and nobody really talked about Cash managing in that game. They just kind of talked about how great the team was. But, think games like that go really, underappreciated when he makes like literally all the right moves. Starting lineup, a little unlucky to put more runs across the board. They had a 293 expected batting average, which is insanely high, and they only put up 2 runs. But, the floodgates are going to open if they keep hitting the ball like that. But what did you think about that game?
Overall, I think it was a good game. I was impressed with Mcclanahan's ability to kind of get out of trouble. I mean, in the first inning, he had bases loaded and got out of it. So I think that was a big takeaway for me. I was kind of excited to see him come out and just throw a gem, and I don't think that he necessarily did that. But I was more impressed with his just ability to not get overwhelmed and kind of show us exactly what we know he could be, which is that ace for us.
Yeah, he kind of looked like after that first inning gem, he looked like the ace of the rotation. Like he just grinded through. His stuff looked pretty good. The command was a little off, but when your stuff is that good, it doesn't really matter. And, we kind of expected him to be on a short leash given, the short buildup in spring. So I think we're going to see a lot. Well, actually, I know we're going to see all of the starting pitchers kind of go through that same innings and pitch limit type thing, at least for the first couple weeks, because that's what Kyle Snyder said a little while ago.
Yeah, and watching the game yesterday, I heard they were talking about it was about Schneider and Cash. They were saying that their starters aren't even stretched out. Like they're not ready to go what we're used to seeing them go, I should say. Like obviously you don't expect them to go 9 innings, but for some of our starters like Yarbrough and Mcclanahan, you kind of expect 5 to 6 innings on a good day. And I think even on a good day, we're going to max out at about 5 for the first few weeks.
Yeah, that's what Snyder said. He said 5 innings pitched or 75 pitches, whichever comes first, really. I think I talked about it last week, but he was saying that on the Neil Solon's pod a little while ago, how, this is a good length of spring training for the hitters, but not necessarily the pitchers, because it takes a lot of time to build up, the proper arm strength and the stamina without, increasing the risk of injury. So the Rays are doing it the right way. It's going to be a bit of a slow buildup. So it's going to be all hands on deck with that bullpen, though, for the next week or so.
And I mean, thank God for our bullpen. I think our team is set up perfect to be able to run that kind of a game plan, because our bullpen is so deep and just so talented.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch yesterday. I'm sure we'll be able to get more into the game as we get in through our Google Doc here with all of our notes. But any other big headlines you want to talk about before we get into the game?
Before we get into the game, I mean, I think we've got to talk about the Meadows trade.
Yeah.
I know we have. I believe from Twitter and from our chats that we have a little bit different view on the trade. So I'm excited to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so the Rays traded Austin Meadows. I know that we're, not breaking this news to anybody. It's been out for a little while, but the Rays traded Austin Meadows to Detroit for Isaac Paredes, a late second round / early third round pick. And then also Josh Lowe gets to crack the opening day roster because of that move. So, they give up Meadows. They get a draft pick. They get Isaac Paredes, and then basically Josh Lowe as well, because he gets added to the roster in place of Meadows.
Yeah, so my biggest thing with this, right? Josh Lowe coming up, that's awesome. He performed well. We'll get into that later, but my biggest thing is we're losing last year he had 27 home runs. Uh, we're losing an MLB guy for a guy who's 23 and been traded twice already without really any crazy big league experience. And when he's gotten his big league experience, he hasn't performed too well, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, I saw an interesting comparison between Paredes and Jose Ramirez of the Guardians. Like their first, like each of them in their first like 200 plate appearance sample size had very similar like batting average, home run rates, on base percentage. Pretty much like down the line, it was like very, very similar. So there's absolutely no cause for concern for me about Paredes and his small sample size at a young age in the major leagues. Like he's gonna, turn it around. He's got a really impressive track record in the minors. So I'm really excited to see him, get some more time at Durham, kind of get into the Rays system, make some, adjustments at the plate if they want him to. And then I think we're probably going to see him in the majors at some point this year.
So my question for you is, where do we see him playing though? Because our infield is granted there's not many on the major league roster. Like that was one of the things that kind of surprised me was how few infielders we actually have on the major league roster. But where do you see him playing as far as in the future?
He can pretty much hold down anywhere except in the infield, like third, shortstop, and second, except for first. Maybe they have him learn first base. I don't really know. He's not gonna come in and start this year like unless there's like an injury or another trade or something like that. So he's more for like, 2023 and beyond. And the Rays are gonna make it work. They always figure out some kind of trade when they need to. So just let him cook in Durham, let him get his at bats, let him develop. And I think come 2023, he'll be more of a regular, but we could see him this year. And I think we will see him this year if there's some kind of, injury or they need a quick right-handed bat to come in and play.
Yeah, and I will say, as against the trade as I was, because I was a Meadows fan, I know that like it's probably kind of a weird take to have as far as like that's why I was so against the trade. But the only positive that I saw, and again, I'm not as into the statistics as some people are, but the positive that I saw was he was a right-handed hitter. So that was what we were talking about. We needed. I guess I just kind of expected to get a right-handed hitter that was ready to perform for us kind of right away. Not necessarily like as a starter or anything, but just come in and be that right-handed hitter for us right away.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what Harold Ramirez is for us. Like he's going to be that right-handed bat that's here until the roster crunch happens again, because it's not going to be at 28 men the full season. And he doesn't have options, which is kind of weird for the Rays to make that move, but I still like it. It was a good move. So he might be on the move, when that roster crunch happens, but Rays will figure it out. I'm just excited that they have so much talent in the system, and we definitely gave up some talent in Austin Meadows, but they get the draft pick, they get playing time for Josh Lowe, and they get probably like a top 3 or 4 like plate discipline guys in the minor leagues, like for his career, like in what is it like over 2,000 plate appearances, he has some of the best plate discipline since like 2017, I believe. So, everybody comes through the minor league. So he's competing against guys that, he did compete against guys that are now currently in the majors. So that talent's definitely going to translate at some point. It's just a matter of, getting the consistent playing time. So really excited about what he's going to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of my other worry is just that consistent playing time, because we do have such young guys in the infield. Like we don't have any aging players really in the infield aside from maybe Yandy Diaz and G-Man. So I guess like with him not playing first now, and again that's something that could change because we saw that with Ramirez. He came in and started first base for us, and I don't think he's had very much first base experience aside from, spring training this year with the Rays.
Right. I mean, I think he played it in like winter ball in like Venezuela or something like that. So, I feel like, I mean, nothing against first baseman, but I feel like just about any like, semi-athletic, competent, baseball player can pick up first base. I know they put Cruz there last season for like a game and he was okay. Like it was fine. It's not a big deal. So, um, yeah, I think they'll figure something out. I'm not too stressed about it. There was a really interesting Fangraphs article on the trade that kind of went through like three stages of grief. How like at first the guy was like, "Wow, this is a huge win for the Tigers," and then he looked at the stats, and then he looked at like what the Tigers needed and what the Rays, need, and how they're building their organizations, and he's like, "Oh, this is a really big win for the Rays." So it felt good to read that article. It felt very like confirming, how I felt about the trade. But yeah, I think the numbers really back up Paredes is going to be pretty good, and they're going to figure something out. They're going to figure out playing time for him in the future. Probably not this year, but next year. And if they don't figure out playing time or enough playing time for him, they'll trade him for another like high end prospect. So the Rays are going to keep loading up that farm system if they keep this up, which is good because that's how you sustain success for a long time.
Yeah, and I don't want all you guys listening to think that I'm just super pessimistic about everything. Uh, so I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that he turns out to be this amazing player for us. Like that would be perfect, and I would not be upset about that at all. Um, and I am excited to see his growth with us because that seems to be what we're good at, is taking people that haven't really had a place to stay and making them into good players. So I think that it could turn out very well for us and be in our favor. And I'm happy for Meadows to go out and he's going to be their everyday left fielder from what I was reading. So that's exciting for him too.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird from a Tigers perspective because that's like acquiring Meadows is like you're trying to win now, and they're still like 2, maybe 3 years away from being competitive in that division. So I don't really understand the point of making that move from the Tigers' perspective. So it seems like they just did it to fill a hole that was, like it is a hole in their lineup, but it also doesn't really matter if they fix it because they're not going to be a playoff team anyways. So I feel like they overpaid a bit, but whatever, we'll take it. We get the prospect and the draft pick. So Peter Benedict's really great move. I love it. And he also made another good move this week by extending Manuel Margot. He got a 2-year, $19 million extension with a really interesting third-year option, which is like a mutual option. So if both parties agree, he'll be playing a third year on that deal for $12 million. So what do you think about that extension for Margot?
So I think that played a big role. That came because of the trade up Meadows, which is awesome because I do love Manuel Margot. There we go. Uh, and I think that he came out in the game and kind of proved why we gave him that extension. With he only got 2 at bats, but he had 2 hits in that game. So uh, I think that just solidifies our outfield a little bit more with the group that we have already.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be like the right-handed center fielder slash occasional corner outfielder, pinch runner. It's a good deal for the Rays and for Margot. Just based on the WAR of it, because I think like one WAR is going to be roughly like $7 to $8 million this year in free agency. So they're getting like a 2-year player or a 2 WAR player almost like locked up for like $9 million, which is pretty good. Like that's a pretty good deal. So. And he gets like financial security as well. So, good for him, good for everybody involved.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not like it's a crazy expensive deal for us, and I think that he's honestly probably worth more than what we're paying for him.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just based on the WAR and the production and the value, like the thing the mentality he brings to the clubhouse, it's a good deal. And I think he's happy to be, in a Rays uniform as well, or he wouldn't have signed an extension so early.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny because if I'm not mistaken, during spring training, he was talking about being one of the older guys in the clubhouse and one of those veterans that the younger kids can come and talk to, and to see that even he's young still. So it's kind of crazy to see him already kind of taking on that role that a guy like Nelson Cruz took up last year or last season.
Yeah, he's just a really great player. He seems like a great guy too. So I'm happy to have him on the team. It's a really great deal, like I said, and he's a great player. And the Rays value defense, and he's a top defender. He led all outfielders in outs above average last year. So he's one of the best in the game at his position.
So overall, you'd say it was a good deal, though?
Absolutely. And another move the Rays made was they acquired right-handed relief pitcher Ralph Garza off waivers from Boston, and Boston acquired him off waivers from Minnesota. So a little bit of musical chairs here, but that was a pretty good move. I don't know if you saw much about it, but
I didn't see much about it, but I would like to give a little shout out to at Rays Metrics on Twitter. Cole predicted both of these things,
yeah.
which was mind blowing to me. Going back and looking at it, obviously, good friend of the show. He's been on two different episodes now. But yeah, I think that watching some of the stuff that I watched on Twitter of him, he's got everything we kind of need or what we value in a pitcher.
Yeah, I like that he throws, sidearm versus right-handers and then kind of like over the top versus lefties. I think that's a really cool, delivery type thing that the Rays might try to exploit and take advantage of. So he's going to go to Durham. He's going to be in AAA for a little bit, and then maybe he'll get called up. I'm sure he'll get called up at some point this season. The Rays like to, use that taxi squad. So I'm excited to see him pitch and see what the Rays do with him.
I'm more excited to see the fact that he came over from Boston, and I know that it was only like a month in Boston, but I was reading some stuff that it seemed like Boston was almost trying to, I don't want to say scam the system, but scam the system. Is the second time this offseason they signed a pitcher and then very shortly afterwards put him through waivers. So they were saying that they were trying to get him through waivers to still be on their roster, but not have to be on the 40-man right away. And both times they did it this off season, it failed for him. So I was happy to see that mostly.
Oh, that's interesting. So they were like trying to send him down to the minors to get him off the 40-man, and then another team was picking him up. Is that what was happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what they had. They had two different pitchers. The first guy, I can't remember his name now. I was reading the article last night. But they had one guy who they brought in for literally 1 week and then sent him down to the minors to get him off the 40-man and still have him on their team. And a team picked him up that day. He wasn't even on waivers for a whole day.
Okay. I mean,
and then they
Garza's
did
a
the
great
same
talent.
thing with Garza.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess everybody tries to do service time manipulation to some extent. So, their GM is literally like Chaim Bloom. Like he's a Rays front office guy, so he probably knows how to manipulate rosters as well as anybody else.
Exactly. And so, but yeah, as far as Garza goes, I don't want to take away from him because I do think that he's going to help us out literally as soon as this season.
Yeah, he's got some cool, interesting stuff. So, any other news you want to talk about before we get into our one and only game this week?
No, I think that's all the news. There was some breaking news though, and that was that RBLR has some of the coolest shirts in the world.
I think I saw that on the ESPN ticker at the bottom or something like that.
Yeah, it pretty much it just read that if you go to shop.rblrsports.com and just check out our shirts, we got all kinds of Tampa Bay team inspired shirt designs from anywhere from the Lightning, the Rays, the Bandits, the Rowdies, the Bucks. We've got it all, and they're some of the nicest looking shirts you're going to find from any podcast. I said it, any podcast. And Mr. Ben Whitelaw has a discount code for you for only the truest of the fans of the show.
Yeah, so that promo code is Flappy. That's FLAPPY. You can get 10% off your order. We'll have that link in the description, but go ahead, help us out, buy a shirt. It costs money. If you don't want to give us money, you can still, subscribe, follow us on social media and stuff. So help us out in some way, and we'll help you out by continuing to produce some pretty above average content, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say we're pretty much the Tampa Bay Rays of podcast.
Nice.
But yeah, so into the game, man. What were your big takeaways? I know that we talked about it a little bit in the beginning of the show, but what were your big takeaways from the first game of what's going to be an amazing long season?
Mcclanahan, bullpen, Kevin Cash. Those are the big takeaways for me. What about you? I mean, I can get into those more in a little bit, but what about your takeaways?
Yeah, so Mcclanahan was one of my big takeaways. I didn't focus so much on Cash. I think I kind of went into the same role that everyone else did as far as just watching the game and not necessarily taking into consideration how good Cash did. But another big takeaway for me was actually Josh Lowe and his ability at the plate.
Yeah, Josh Lowe was really good. He had some really nice at bats. They didn't always end up, productive on the stat sheet, but he still did a lot to kind of like slow the game down, and I really like that type of at bat.
Yeah, I felt like his plate vision. I mean, he walked twice, and I felt like obviously I would have loved to see him just rip a shot over the fence, but the ability for him to be so talented and patient is a very good sign for things to come in the future, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of, the top hitters in terms of like power and just batted balls in general, like in the minors. But, to add that extra element of the plate discipline and the patience and, just taking what the game is going to give you, I think that's a really mature approach from a rookie. I know he's a bit older for a rookie, but it's still impressive. And I'm really happy with Josh Lowe so far.
Yeah, I think that when the time comes, he's going to be the replacement for Kiermaier. So I'm just excited to see him performing. And even though it's just one game, I think that he's just going to continue to grow on it, and he's going to be one of our better hitters this season.
Definitely, but I think we probably are more likely to see either Margot or Phillips replace Kiermaier because Josh Lowe. I knew I was going to make that mistake at some point. Josh Lowe's defense is, not. I mean, it's good, like it's above average, but it's not like, top 3 center fielder of all time type of defense. So I think he's probably going to be a corner outfielder most of his time, as long as Margot and Phillips are still on the roster. But yeah, I mean, he's still incredible, and I'm really excited to watch him play more this season.
And that's fair. You're probably right. I would take your advice over my advice as far as where he's going to play at any day of the week. So if you guys are listening, write down what Ben says because I'm telling you he's probably right.
I mean, he's a great athlete.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it on the head, though, is that Phillips, Margot, and Kiermaier are all better than him defensively. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because all 3 of them are very good defensive players.
Right.
I think that he's got the edge on – God, it pains me to say it, but I think that he's definitely got the edge on Phillips for offensive ability. And I think he's pretty much maybe a little bit better than Margot offensively, but not to the extent where I could see him ever replacing Margot as far as who's going to play center field. So I think your take is probably right.
Right. I mean, they're still going to platoon him anyways most of the time because that's, the Rays way. But yeah, either way, he's going to be a great player, and I'm excited for him to finally be on the roster. So what other things did you like from this game?
So the other big thing for me, and we just kind of talked about him, was, Margot came out after his extension and they replaced him with Brett Phillips after his second at bat, but still for him to come out and go 2 for 2, and both were not easy hits. They were, John Means was throwing a pretty good ball to start the game. So for me, it was just seeing his again, patience. And if I'm not mistaken, one of his at-bats, it was like a 10-pitch at-bat, so he made them put in work. Like, he was just performing kind of how you expect one of our starting outfielders to perform, and I like to see that.
Yeah, definitely. I really like Shane Mcclanahan. I know I mentioned it before, but he was averaging 10 inches of rise on his fastball, which is, that's like way better than he was doing last year. So I like the rise more than the horizontal movement because it results in more swing and miss. And then we saw him throw a pretty good game. Like he had a 1.52 FIP that game. So anything below two is honestly like pretty good, borderline elite. So I really like what I saw from him. And I know it's, after a 4 inning sample size, but he was still really good in those 4 innings. And a lot of that was because of that really nice movement on the fastball.
Yeah, and I think that again, I talked about it earlier, but just his character to kind of, all right, well, I loaded the bases, now I want to get out of it. Like to me, that means more than just ability, like where your headspace is at when you're getting in there. And you could see him being like physically, like you could see him getting emotional about it after each inning. And he didn't want to come out of the game, which is one of the things that I like. Like he was ready to keep going.
Yeah, it was just overall a great pitching duel. I think John Means had like a 1.4 FIP or something like that for the game. So two really good left-handed starters going at it. And I was kind of like a little concerned that this was going to be one of the games that got away from the Rays because it kind of felt like a game that they could have lost. But like I said before, Cash pulled all the right strings and the bullpen did their job and they got out of there with the win. So I really like Jeffrey Springs, his three strikeouts in his inning, and he also had a 60% whiff rate, which is insane. I know it's 1 inning, but like an elite whiff rate is 40%. So if he's putting up 60%, and if he can do that like semi consistently, he's going to be a lockdown dominant reliever this year.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say as far as relievers is JP Fireeisen. If you don't like that mustache on that man, you're a lunatic. He is rocking it, and he again came out and performed. That was one of the guys that I enjoyed watching as far as the bullpen went yesterday.
Yeah, him and Kittredge both had whiff rates over 40% in that game, which, like we said, 40 is elite. So they had a fantastic game. Just I know Matt Whistler threw one bad pitch, but he was a top 10 reliever since coming to the Rays last year. So not concerned about that. I know Twitter was very much overreacting on that one, but it's understandable. You never want to, give up the first run of the season, but he'll be fine. But overall bullpen was really good. And then we got to see the new signing Brooks Raley, which was cool.
Yeah, I mean, he came out. He only faced one batter, but he threw 6 pitches, and 3 of those were strikes. And really, the first pitch he threw should have been a strike, but I don't think the ump was paying attention. So
No, they weren't
should have
paying
been
attention at all yesterday.
4 of the 6 pitches he threw should have been strikes, and it went both ways because while I was watching, there was some calls on the Rays side, especially at one of the maybe his only plate appearance, but G-Man Choi, one of his at bats, I was like, how that was a strike? Like, what are they looking at?
Yeah, it's early in the season for the umpires too, I guess. I thought the umpires announcing the replays was kind of cool. I thought that was really interesting, but the replay that they announced, like they got that call wrong. Like, am I crazy or
Oh no, you completely accurate. Like even the announcers, again, I'm going back to the announcers because I was watching the game on my phone and watching or listening to the announcers are like, yeah, there's no way that this gets overturned. There's no way. His foot's clearly off the bag, and then they come back and they're like, yeah, the play has been overturned, and the announcer said, well, apparently I'm in mid form or mid season form already because I'm already getting stuff wrong. But it's like very clearly his foot was off the bag, so I don't see what they were looking at.
yeah, it's maybe they had like another angle or something that they weren't showing us, but yeah, it feels like this happens to the Rays a lot. And I know last year, based on called strikes or like the strike zone and stuff, they were like the third most penalized team, like in terms of like bad calls by the umpires at home plate. So um, I think it's because the Rays hitters are so patient at the plate and they like to see a lot of pitches. And I feel like that kind of like leads to a greater margin of error. But, it'll be interesting to see if the umpires can, do a semi decent job this year and not penalize the Rays so much. I mean, they still won 100 games last year with the, playing against the umpires, 3 out of 4 times every week. So I think they'll be fine this year, but it's just interesting how the Rays and the Dodgers were hated on by the umpires a lot last year too. So I mean, it's got to be
And
like an approach type thing.
I think that you just brought up a really good point that I never really thought about, but the fact that the Rays do like to see a lot of pitches, it kind of you're right where it widens that margin of error because it allows, if you're only seeing 4 pitches as opposed to 8, that's 4 more pitches that you can mess up on as an ump, as opposed to
Yeah,
just having someone that comes up and swings at the first pitch.
that's true. And they do mess up a lot. Those umpires are pretty terrible, but their union is strong and they've been fighting off the robo-umps for a while. So I don't know when we're going to see that. But when they do, I think we're going to see like Yandy Diaz lead the league in walks or something like that because I feel like he gets cheated out of a lot of those.
So this is kind of random, but we were talking about the play at first with Mountcastle. I think Mountcastle is their first baseman. But I was watching Harold Ramirez. His ability at first, he almost looked kind of natural at first base. Like, I'm sorry, I know that's completely random and I forgot to talk about it earlier, but real quick, what was your take on him at first?
Yeah, I thought he was fine. I feel like he made the plays he had to make. I think he dropped one of the balls that he could have got a guy out on for like an infield hit. But I mean, it's like his first like professional game at first base, I think. So it's fine. I'm sure he'll only get better. I don't think he could get any worse, and he was pretty solid. So, Jimon Choi is not that good of a defender. Like he's a little bit below average at first. So, if Harold Ramirez can just be like average to slightly below average, I think he's the right-handed first baseman for at least the foreseeable future.
Oh yeah, I agree, and I think the play you might be talking about was a double play ball.
I think it
where
was.
Franco made an amazing defensive play, falling away from second base. He hit Lau right where it needed to be, and Lau stood in and rocketed the ball. It was a little off to the right of Ramirez, but I think Ramirez did a good job getting in front of it with the glove and knocking it down. Could he have made the play? Probably, if he was like an elite first baseman. But I think that I was just overall impressed with his ability just to stop the bleeding, if that makes sense, like not to make it any worse.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, like you said, that's like pretty important to, stop the bleeding, not try to do too much. Cause, your first time at first base, you might try to, keep your foot on the bag and reach for a ball, and then you send it, dribbling off into right field or whatever. So it's good that he, knows his limits, and I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be serviceable. I don't think he's going to be like, a gold glover or anything, but he'll get the job done. And the rest of the Rays infield is pretty strong anyways, so he won't really have too much digging to do, like picking balls out of the dirt and stuff or getting wide throws.
Yeah, and that's so I think that I wasn't super excited about the Ramirez signing originally, or we traded for him, right? Yeah, we traded for him. So the trade, I wasn't like super against it, but I wasn't all for it because at first I was just reading outfielder. But I will say, watching him play yesterday, my worries about that trade are kind of diminishing already.
Yeah, I think the Rays 99.999 times out of 100, they're making the right move. And even if it's the wrong move, then they are able to trade that guy and make a better move later down the road. Like, so no concerns with Ramirez or even the Paredes trade, but that's going to be like a year before we really see the results anyways. So it's hard to say like who definitively won and definitively lost that trade, but the Rays win. They win their trades in the long run.
Yeah, and I need to keep telling myself that. Like, I post this stuff on Twitter and I post this stuff on Facebook, and where like I see stuff and I'm like, yeah, this is a dumb trade. And then I realize that I'm a construction inspector, not a baseball GM who has one of the best teams in the league. Like, they're probably more right than I am. So I got to remind myself that, like, just because I don't like it from a player standpoint, that it's probably for the best of the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be critical and stuff though too. Like we should still question them, and asking questions leads to really good research and some great articles that I've seen recently on like Fangraphs. And I know D-Rays Bay, they interviewed Peter Bendix the other day, like just some really great stuff, like just from asking questions. But yeah, this is a good front office.
I would say potentially the best front office.
Yeah, definitely. So anything else from the game before we move on to talking about some injuries?
That is my that's my take on the game so far.
Nice. Well, we got another one today, so I'm excited for that. But yeah, in terms of injuries, we got Shane Baz. He played catch on Thursday last week, so that's pretty cool. Everything seems to be going okay, so he'll probably be out till like mid-May, I think is like the timeline, I'm pretty sure. Fairbanks, he's still shut down for a while with his partially torn lat, and really sucks on this one, but Colby White is done for the season, which hurts because I was excited to see him.
Yeah, I think Colby White was one of the guys that I was most excited for this season, to see him in the pen, in all honesty.
Yeah, he had to get Tommy John surgery. He got it on Monday, so everything went well with the surgery, and we will see him at some point in 2023, I'm sure. But it's not a big loss because he wasn't even on the major league roster, but it's a big loss of potential because he was the best reliever in the minor leagues last year, and his splitter was really cool. His fastball was really cool. So I don't know. The bullpen was crowded anyways, but it still sucks.
Yeah, the bullpen was crowded, and maybe he wouldn't have started the season in the majors, but I think the biggest thing for me is not only are we losing, the potential for him to be on the roster at some point this season, but he's losing a whole year of development.
Yeah.
So that's the part that kind of hurts the most for me, and I would imagine for him is that, he's basically taking obviously he's going to be in a clubhouse, he's going to be there for all the meetings and all that, but he's losing a year of playing time essentially.
Yeah, and he kind of needed that to like fine tune his stuff because he was a little. I mean, he was really good in the spring, but there were a couple things that I noticed in his delivery that he kind of needs to polish up, and I'm sure Kyle Snyder would had a plan for him to work on that in Durham. But yeah, he's done. So I'm sure we'll see some other really cool relievers come up this season from the arm farm down there. And yeah, but that's pretty much it for injuries, thankfully. Not too much happening there yet.
So real quick with Baz, do you when he is healthy, do you see him coming in and instantly making? Obviously, he'll have to warm up at probably AAA, but do you see him? Excuse me. Do you see him coming in and being a bullpen arm for us as opposed to a starter for when he first comes to the majors?
I think he'll do like the thing the starters are doing now, where he'll go like, a max of 5 innings, 75 pitches. He'll probably pitch like 3 to 4 innings in his first couple starts because command isn't his best tool. So he might struggle a little bit, but I think he'll get like 100 innings this season as a starter, primarily, maybe as a bulk guy a little bit. But he'll be throwing probably 100, 110 innings this year, and I think he'll be in Rookie of the Year contention. I think this injury does make it a little bit simpler in how they're going to manage his innings because they don't have to like spread them out more because it'll be like a more condensed season for him now that he's missing like a month, maybe a month and a half. So yeah, he'll be fine though. I've no concerns. This was like a weird kind of a fluke injury type thing, and he'll bounce back from it. And he's still really good, and it's going to be nice to see him pitch in the majors because he has really, really good stuff.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm excited for him. I mean, I was excited for him last season.
Yeah, I mean he's ready for the big leagues. Like he has arrived. He's dominated every level of the minors. There's nothing left for him to do down there except for his rehab assignment, which he'll probably start within like 2, maybe 3 weeks, I think.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, guys. Shane Baz is going to be in the Rookie of the Year votes. So
yeah, he'll have to be.
Mark it down.
Yeah. So one last thing before we wrap it up here, unless you had anything else, I just want to talk about the Peter Bendix interview on D-Rays Bay. Brett Rutherford interviewed him over there, and it was a really great interview. There were tons of things to talk about. I'm not going to talk about everything from it because there's so much, and you should go listen to it yourself. I know I usually plug the Neil Solon's pod here, but nothing was really that. I mean, he had good stuff this week, but nothing too exciting compared to this Bendix interview. So, yeah, I guess I mean, I was on the D-Rays Bay podcast, and then they got Brett Phillips and then Peter Bendix. So, I wasn't their most famous guest, but it was still cool to be on there, and it's cool that they got Peter Bendix because he was a great interview, and that's where I learned that it's Isaac Paredes and not Isaac Paredes, like I was saying before. So, really good to learn that before this.
But I mean, let's be honest. You were on first, right?
That's true. Yeah, I was
So
there before.
I think you being on there, Brett Phillips and Bendix were like, well, Ben Whitelaw is there. That means they're up to something good.
Yeah, that's probably how the conversations probably went something like that, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous. I can't lie. That you got to be on there, and then the fact that they're getting, my favorite player of all time on their podcast. It is what it is, though. Still love Brett.
That was a great interview too. Like that, those are two really good episodes they put out. So that was cool. Good for them.
But yeah, so aside from that though, what else we got? I mean, we got games this week, dude. I'm so happy to be back in the swing of baseball. We're getting multiple games a week that we can watch.
Yeah, the Rays are going to finish up their series against Baltimore. I know we got Drew Rasmussen versus Jordan Lyles today, and then Corey Kluber versus, I think, Tyler Wells tomorrow. Tyler Wells is really good. I was doing a little bit of game notes for that game, and I was surprised at how good he is. I feel like they're going to give us a little bit of trouble in that game. But then Oakland comes in for 4 at the Trop, and then we'll see one game in Chicago against the White Sox before we do our next podcast. So pretty full week of baseball, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the pitchers. This is my favorite time of the year to see what they got.
So who are you most excited to see?
That's pretty tough. I'd probably say in terms of, yeah, I guess Corey Kluber. I'm really interested to see his curveball. He's got a really, really good curveball, like, a Hall of Fame type curveball. I think he's probably like a fringe Hall of Famer. He's been around for a while.
He has been around a minute.
Yeah, I'm excited about Kluber. Obviously, Ryan Yarborough, that goes without saying. And I'm interested in Drew Rasmussen today. I want to see if his start today looks anything like what we saw in the spring. But yeah, what about you? What are you looking forward to this week?
I think all last season I was a huge Rasmussen fan. You guys, if you haven't listened, I highly recommend. I know it's a while back, but go back and check out some of our other shows because I was high on Rasmussen all season, and then I was also very high on Patino. So I'm excited to see Patino come out and perform. I know that his last spring training game, he kind of showed a third pitch a little bit, and it wasn't amazing, but I think that I'm just excited to see him come out and perform and prove me right, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that. I want the Rays to, sweep Baltimore and then hopefully take 3, maybe 4 from Oakland. I mean, Oakland is, they're not a very good team, to put it nicely. So I think we can win that series.
Yeah, I mean, especially with them getting rid of basically everyone. I think they're in a full-blown rebuild mode. So I think that we should be able to – we're kind of starting the season on a bunch of teams that are on 2 teams that aren't really the greatest teams in the world, which is nice for confidence anyway.
Yeah, and I know the White Sox are already getting hit with the injury bug. I think Giolito went down yesterday. I'm not sure.
Yep. Yeah, he did.
So they traded away Kimbrel. They lost, one of their top relievers. And then Giolito goes down. I think Lance Lynn is okay. I think I read something that he was hurt. So should be interesting going into Chicago. I still think the White Sox are the favorite in that division, but the Twins are making some noise. So they made noise 2 years ago when they made a bunch of acquisitions and stuff, and then they kind of pooped the bed in the regular season. So, we'll see if the Twins can put it together. But yeah, I think I think Detroit is still really far away from competing, but I think Minnesota and Chicago are going to be the 2 teams to watch there.
Yeah, I'm giving it to Minnesota to win that division, but I do think that Chicago's offense is scary.
Yeah, they've got a lot of good pieces. All right.
Now,
Well,
just to touch on it real quick, if you don't mind, Mr. Ben,
no, go for it.
Did you catch any of the Boston New York game?
I watched like a little bit of the first inning, and I really like to see Garrett Cole get slapped around a little bit. That was pretty funny.
Garrett Cole is officially my least favorite player in the MLB. He was getting all butt hurt that the game started like 4 minutes late.
Yeah.
Like, bro, and then for you to come out and just for Devers to rip a nasty shot, he wants that extension bad. um, but my takeaway from that is both of those offenses looked really good yesterday.
Yeah, I think
As much as I
Yankee
hate to admit it.
Stadium. They play in like a little league park. There, I watched. Do you follow the home run tracker or like Would It Dong on Twitter or what? Yeah, I think it's Would It Dong. They do like
Well,
if
I
the
go into right now.
yeah they do like they determine if it would be a home run in other parks and stuff. And there were a couple home runs in that game where it would be a home run in Yankee Stadium and nowhere else. So um, I mean the home offense is going to be pretty good from the Yankees, but the road offense is going to be pretty good too because they keep the walls in the same places no matter who's batting. So there's going to be a lot of offense at Yankee Stadium for sure. And it felt a little bit like those balls were juiced. A lot of the fly balls
Yeah.
were making some loud noises off the bat. I was a little confused by that.
But yeah, so that was my only question because I was watching that game and I can't lie, I was a little worried, but I know that we're still better than them, but that their offense both those offenses looked decent last night.
Yeah, I think they can battle out for third place in the division. That's fine with me if they want to go back and forth. But the Rays are a tier above them, and then the Blue Jays are not too far behind the Rays, and then there's the Red Sox and the Yankees, and then Baltimore is just kind of Baltimore's just doing whatever they want. That's fine. They're gonna figure it out when their young guys come up. They got some good talent down there in the minors.
So I think it's safe to say, minus Baltimore, we're probably in one of the toughest divisions.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Because I think realistically, and again, I hate to give Boston and New York props. I don't really mind the Blue Jays, but I hate to give Boston and New York props. But I think that we could have 4 of our 5 teams with winning records.
Yeah, I know the Fangraphs predicted like the Rays, Blue Jays, Yankees, and Red Sox all to win like 88 games or something like that.
I think it was 84. I think I saw exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, fours and eights look the same to me. I don't know why, but yeah, they're like all projected to finish with the same record. So, the projections are usually a bit on the conservative side, so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a pretty good division race this year. Like, I don't think anybody's completely out of it. I still think the Yankees and Red Sox are third place teams, but
Yeah,
it'll be pretty tight with the top 4.
Then you got Baltimore vying for the number 1 overall pick every year. So
yeah, they're getting closer. They've made a couple good moves. Like they're not terrible. They've got Grayson Rodriguez coming up. Adley's going to come up soon. There's a guy they have, Colby Mayo. He's pretty good. You got a couple of good players. So I'm not a Baltimore fan, but what they're doing in the minors is pretty impressive. So I think in like 2 to 3 years they're going to start to be competitive, but definitely not this year. And we saw that yesterday.
yeah, and they have 2 players on their team that I am a huge fan of. Just them overall as players, obviously not as Orioles, but Mullins and Mountcastle are 2 of my favorite players in the MLB in general, and I don't know why, but I love both of them.
Yeah, they've got some good pieces. Like they're not. I mean, they're still going to win like 50 games this year probably, but yeah, I don't think they're going to be. I don't think the Rays are going to go like 18-1 against them this year like they did last year.
Yeah.
So maybe like 16-2 or 17-2. I don't know. It's hard to dominate a team like that.
Exactly. Once you see a team so many times, you think that you would kind of, you think you kind of get used to them and be able to at least put up a fight, which they did last night. I'll give them that. They did yesterday.
Yeah, but it took like a really, really good performance from John Means, and a couple like, over performances from the bullpen. So yeah, I think the Rays will be okay today. I know we're recording this on Saturday. They got a game in a couple hours. I think they'll get this one, but the game tomorrow is the one that I think might be a little tough because Tyler Wells is good. He's really good.
I mean, he's got to be good. If you change two letters and one letter in his first name, one letter in his last name, he's Taylor Walls. So
that's true.
He's got to be at least a little good having a name that close.
Yeah, that checks out.
Science.
All right. So, anything else before we sign off here?
I think that's it for me. Ben kind of touched on it before, but if you could go just give us a follow and a like on all the major wherever you listen to your podcast at, Google, Apple, Spotify. We're on all the social medias at RBLR Sports, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. If you just go give us a like and a follow, we would appreciate it so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe on our podcast on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, like us individually, me and Zack. Follow Eureka too if you want. Definitely
only if you want.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you everybody for listening, and go Rays.
Go Rays.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.